Hello. Morning, church. How are you guys doing today? Those of you who answered, better type something in the comments because you know I can't hear you. We had a couple scheduling conflicts this week, so you're stuck with just me for tonight. Rather today, because it's tonight for me, today for you. Oh, let's hang out and let's do a little bit of worship. And we'll let Jeremy teach us a bit. Find me in the river. Find me on my knees. I've walked against the water. Now I'm waiting if you please. I long to see the roses, but never felt the thorn. Bought a pretty crown, but never paid the price. Find me in the river, find me there. Find me on my knees, with my soul laid bare. Even though you're gone, and I'm cracked and dry. Find me in the river, I'm waiting here for you. Find me in the river, find me on my knees. I've walked against the water. I'm waiting if you please. happen in this place. More than we imagine, more than we can fathom. Anything can happen in this place. Faith is rising, rising up inside. Faith is rising, bringing us to life. Faith is rising, rising up inside. Faith is rising, bringing us to life. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Anything can happen in this place. More than we imagine, more than we can fathom. Anything can happen in this place. Healing's falling, falling down like rain. Healing's flowing from Emmanuel's veins. Healing's falling, falling down like rain. Healing's flowing from Emmanuel's veins. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Anything can happen in this place. More than we imagine, more than we can fathom. Anything can happen in this place. Come and break addiction, bring us into freedom. 'Cause anything can happen in this place. Give us dreams and visions, let us see your kingdom. 'Cause anything can happen in this place. Faith is rising, rising up inside. Faith is rising, bringing us to life. Faith is rising, rising up inside. Faith is rising, bringing us to life. Healing's falling, falling down like rain. Healing's flowing from Emmanuel's veins. Healing's falling, falling down like rain. And healing's flowing from Emmanuel's veins. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Anything can happen in this place. More than we imagine, more than we can fathom. Anything can happen in this place. Anything can happen in this place. Anything can happen in this place. Your call comes like a morning breeze. You spread your wings and cover me. Underneath your shadow, I will hide away. There I found your shelter, and there I'd like to stay. When the world is shaking and nothing stands, I'll hold on to your hand. You're my Your call comes like a morning breeze. You spread your wings and cover me. Underneath your shadow, I will hide away. 'Cause there I found your shelter, and there I'd like to stay. 'Cause you're my refuge. You're my refuge. When the world is shaking and nothing stands, I will hold on to your hand. You're my refuge. When the world is shaking and nothing stands, I will hold on to your hand. Refuge, you're my refuge. Refuge.
Good morning, Glory. So happy you guys could join us on this morning, evening, afternoon, whenever you get a chance to watch this. Thank you for the worship team as well for getting us back to some state of normal. I'm sure, like the rest of you, I've really missed our Sundays together. And with the last couple of weeks with having worship and some teachings online, it's really kind of made me feel a little bit normal again. And I'm hoping that does the rest for you as well. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about something that I think we can all relate with. It's keeping our eye on the prize or keeping our focus on the prize. As you guys know, my teachings usually have some sort of background of something personal that happened or I encountered. This one particularly, we were at my niece Sarah's birthday party. It was an ice skating party over at the Outpost Skate Arena. And we were skating. I was having some foot issues, so I didn't skate with the rest of the family. As a result, I ended up tying all of the nephews and kids' shoes about 17 times each, and I got to sit and watch. Those of you who have not been to the Outpost lately, there is a big glass partition which allows everybody to sit above and look down at the skaters below. And one thing I noticed is people would get in a rhythm as they were skating, and they were having a real good time. And then there had that moment of confidence where they wanted to look up at their loved one and wave at them and kind of say, hey, I'm doing good. And in that moment, they would lose their balance, they would stick a toe or whatever, and it would end up in them falling, them losing their balance, them, just scaring themselves. That is something that I noticed several times, even with my own family members. They would come skating by and they were getting a good lap speed going, and then they would look up and they would see us, and then they would lose their focus of the ice, and then they'd fall down. It was humorous but scary at the same time because they're on ice and they're wearing skates, and it's not ideal. But I witnessed a lot of people do that, and I realized that is something that I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us lose focus on what we're doing just in everyday life, just everything we do. When we lose focus, not a lot of good things happen usually, as you guys know. I mean, you don't often hear people saying, I wasn't paying attention and, all this great stuff happened and everything worked out. Usually if people aren't paying attention, bad things happen or nothing, really generates from there. So I started thinking then about our relationship with God and what happens when we lose focus there. What happens when we lose focus in our prayer lives, in our quiet time with God, attending church services with God. What happens when we lose focus there or we don't make it a focus at all? And, I think I can speak for all of us when I say that when we don't focus on God, not a lot of good happens. I can assure you that it doesn't improve. And, we're not going to grow closer to Him if we're not spending time with Him and focusing on Him. For me personally, I can tell you, I've shared on this before, it is a pretty consistent struggle, to balance work, home, team schedules, all that stuff, and, getting my time in with God. Personally, I use my lunch hour to do a lot of that, and I've been doing that, the daily devotional, the promise calendar that we hand out at the beginning of the year. Been doing that on my lunch hours. Due to the pandemic, we really haven't had a chance to go to lunch. We've been kind of quarantined in our office, and I've been stuck in the office and not getting to go to lunch. So as a result, last time I looked, it was Easter Sunday, and I was 2 weeks behind. So it's just kind of proved to me that if we lose that focus and we don't make God the focus, just how easily it can get out of hand and get out of control. So a couple of things that we also lose focus on in our everyday life. For example, what if we're driving on the road and we take our eyes off the road? What generally happens? If we're looking at the road and we look over to the right, we're going to veer right. If we look off to the left, we're going to veer left. Worst case scenario, we're going to run off the road, we're going to hit somebody, we're going to hit something, right? What about playing sports? If you play a sport where you have to look at a ball, like baseball, football, basketball, soccer, anything where you have to make eye contact with a ball, you're going to miss the ball if you're not focusing on the ball. At work, if you get sidetracked and lose focus on your task or your project and you fall behind, you get behind, you sometimes lose bids, sometimes you lose just your job in general. It all sounds pretty simple, but I think in almost anything we do, we need to keep our eyes on what we're doing, and we need to keep the task in focus, right? So if we all know that we need to keep our eye on the prize and our focus on the task at hand, why do we struggle with it so much? Now, this is the time when I would ask for a show of hands. Can't do that right now, obviously. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're not perfect. We're going to lose focus. We're going to be, I know a lot of you heard the phrase squirrel, so if you are talking and then you see, squirrel and you go off on another tangent, right? We get caught going down those trails, and just kind of lose focus. The world draws our attentions. It's hard to regain that focus once it's lost, right? So when we look at our Christian life, what is our main focus supposed to be? We all know the answer to that question, right? Our main focus as Christians should be our relationship with God. That should be first and foremost. As Dave mentioned last week, we should be spreading the good news of what God has to offer. But if we're not focusing on the news ourselves, how are we supposed to spread it? So we know, we've all done with that, and we've all dealt with that. But I want to take a second to look at how this loss of focus affects our relationships with God. Okay, so all you guys at home, I need you to participate. So who feels that things go much smoother when God is in control or when you've submitted to God? Okay, everybody look at your neighbor, look at your family member, make sure their hand is up, okay? We all know that. This is the case for all of us. We all know this. So if we know that things are easier for us when God is in our lives, why do we struggle so much to make it on our own? Because we're human, we're prideful, and we're going to, think we could do it on our own, right? So I wanted to pull one example from the Bible today. This one I chose because it's both amazing and it's very simple at the same time. Okay, so everybody turn in your Bibles with me, or turn to your phones in the Bibles with me, or look at the screen. But we're going to go to Matthew chapter 14, verses 25 to 31. Okay, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Okay, so one thing that I think a lot of people miss in this passage is verses 28 to 30. Okay, so if we read 28 to 30, it's the part where Peter replied, "Tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. Okay, so just to clarify, I know a lot of people talk about Jesus walking on the water, but this clearly states that Peter was walking on the water. Okay, that's the part that's amazing. Okay, Peter is no different than you and I, other than the fact that he was living in the time of Jesus. He was a guy doing God's work, and he walked on water because he put his focus in Jesus. Okay, verse 30, Peter notices the waves, notices the wind, and he gets scared. He probably realized, I'm walking on water. Okay, that is not something that normal people do. Obviously, we know that. So here's the part that makes it simple. Peter took his focus off of Jesus, looked at the world around him, and started to sink. Okay, up until he knew what he was doing something that nobody other than Jesus could claim to do, right? So he lost focus of the simple thing that was in front of him, which was Jesus. Okay, so in verse 31, Jesus asked Peter, "Why did you doubt?" Now, it doesn't tell us exactly what Peter says here, but I would guess it might have something to do with the fact that people don't usually walk on water, and he was walking out to meet Jesus, and probably freaked out a little bit. I know I would, and I'm assuming a lot of us would as well. So I think we can all relate with Peter here, because people don't usually walk on water, but when he put his faith in Jesus, he did. He did something that was amazing, and it was simple for him, right? So now, how do we tie this into our lives today? So for me personally, every single time, and I've told you guys this every time, and I probably will every time I get asked to teach, this sense of just terrifying fear comes over me, and I freak out about what I'm going to talk about. I worry that it's not going to make any sense, and then I'm going to be up here looking like a big dummy, and I'm not going to be asked to do it again. I can honestly tell you that is the exact opposite of what does happen, and it's mainly due to one reason. Because once I stop freaking out and I settle down and I start really praying about it and studying and just working on it and devoting the time and effort to it, it's all delivered by God. Okay, I know that without a doubt, I'm confident that whatever message I deliver when I'm up here is the exact message that God wanted me to deliver that day. And I feel the same way about this one today. This was supposed to be done several weeks ago before the first day we had to cancel church. This was supposed to be the teaching, and I prayed and prayed about it when I was asked to do it again, if I needed to change the subject matter, and it just kept coming back to me through verses that I was reading and just things that happened, that this is what I needed to do. So I know without a doubt that if you put the focus in, God will reward you and guide you where you want him to go. Okay, so it's like when I decide to finally just stop bickering and worrying about what's going to happen and put the focus on God, it's like a light switch just snaps on and everything lines up. So when we tie this into real world, surprisingly today is not a difficult scenario for a modern day example. Okay, I'm teaching to a camera with one other person in the building with me today. There's an empty auditorium, which, usually I like to make some people laugh and, kind of have fun up here. And today it's just two of us. So it's due to the lockdown from the COVID-19 pandemic. And, this thing has gotten out of hand in a hurry, right? People are working from home. Kids are attending school remotely from home. People are testing their skills as barbers, giving out quarantine cuts. People are just letting it go and see what's going to happen at the end of this. We might have some different hairstyles. And then if you want toilet paper or Clorox wipes, you have to line up outside of the stores like it's Black Friday and you're waiting for a 42-inch TV. It's just something that reminds us every single day as we're going through this pandemic that if there were ever a time that God needed to be our main focus, it's right now. If, there's ever a reminder that, no matter what the world around us is doing, we know who's in control. We know that God is in control. God is still on the throne. And I don't want people to get me wrong. I don't think that this virus is not a concern. It absolutely is. We all need to be careful and mindful and follow all the instructions. But this virus or pandemic is not bigger than God. This virus or pandemic does not change the fact that God is in control of this world. Especially as Christians, we know that whatever happens to us, we know what the end game is, right? So where do we go from here? Okay, so we know that we need to focus on God, especially during this crazy time. So how do we keep our focus on God? How do we turn that focus back on? Okay, so let's all turn to Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Okay, this lines it up pretty straight and narrow, right? So step 1, trust God. Step 2, do not rely on your own ideas. Step 3, submit to him. And then step 4, he will lead the way. Okay, it seems way too simple, almost too simple or too easy. But when you think about it, It really is that simple. Okay, if you follow him, he will take care of you. He will lead the way. The more aspects of your life that you submit to him and you devote to follow him, the more control he'll take, the more he'll show you what truly is ideally set for your life. Now, I want to point out that this verse does not say, submit the things you're willing to give up, right? It does not say submit the stuff that works for you. It says all of your ways. Okay, so if you're going to submit, you have to do it 100%. Okay, for me personally, while preparing this teaching, I realized that there were some areas of my life that I needed to submit to God. And I hope I'm not alone in saying that. I can't ask for a show of hands again, obviously. But I feel that as Christians, we're always looking to improve our relationship with God. And if we're always looking to improve our relationship with God, that means it's not perfect. And if it's not perfect, there's room for improvement. So this is going to mean something different to all of us. Some of us might not even know where to start. The important thing is that we take that step and try and start, right? Peter was not going to walk on the water if he didn't step out of the boat. Okay, we have to be willing to step off that boat and put our trust in God. If all the uncertainty surrounding us in the world right now, what better time to get refocused on God? Okay, I think we can all say we have some additional free time to spend some more time with God, right? Whether you're working at home, whether you're going to work every day, you're not able to do all the stuff you normally do, and you are able to, take this time, and while you're focusing on all your other stuff you're trying to learn during quarantine and improve, take the time to refocus on God. That's just a word of encouragement that I want to offer everybody. And in wrapping up, I always like to use a song. You guys know that, to add my teaching time average up. The song for today is a song that I heard Matt lead for the first time. It's called Nothing Else. It's by Cody Carnes. There's a line in this song that just, every time I hear it leading up to this, it was on repeat on my Spotify at work, and it just, every time this line came up, it would just remind me that this is what, the easiest way to do this. The line is, "Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you." That is exactly what we need to do if we have any doubts about what our devotion is with God. This is how you first devote your life to God. You take where we all started is you open up your heart and invite God and Jesus into your heart, right? That is how we start this walk, and that is how we will continue this walk. So normally I'd play a video, but today, since with the streaming formats and how that will work, it's going to be a little different. So I asked Matt if he could play the song as one of the last couple songs that the worship team does. What I'd like to do is for all of us to take this time while they're playing and pray. I want us all to, take this time. It can be just you and God. It can be as a family. I know a lot of us are sitting watching this over the breakfast table or on our living room TVs or wherever you're doing it. Take some time and pray. I want you to pray on your own. I want you to open your hearts, and I want you to pray that He will show you those areas that you need to refocus in your life. And in those areas, I want you to just simply ask Him to step in and lead the way. Okay? Let's use what we've learned from what Peter did. If we focus on Him, He will not lead us astray. There's nothing that we can't do without Him in our lives. Okay, so let's put ourselves in Peter's shoes, and let's step off the boat, and let's put our focus on Jesus, and let's get through the storm together. So that is all I have for today. I want to thank you guys again. I cannot wait personally till we all get to meet again and get to see all your bright, shiny faces. But until then, I encourage you to keep focusing and improving and working until we get back together. Hope you guys have a great week. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm one of those guys that's just letting it grow, so you'll have to excuse my ridiculous haircut, or lack thereof, rather. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song and take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you, oh, to you. Oh, I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough and take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you, oh, to you. I'm caught up in your presence, and I just want to sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything. And more than anything that you can do, I just want